If you drafted already, there's a good chance that you took the wrong running backs. And if you haven't, you're about to fall into the same trap as everyone else, chasing the same overhyped names. But that's how you blow your draft before the season even starts. So let me tell you the 5 backs that you should have drafted instead. By the way, I'm Joe. I've done over 1 billion views in sports over the last decade. But more importantly, I've helped thousands of people just like you win their fantasy league. The way I structure these videos is always the same. First, I start every video with the top NFL news stories and why they matter for fantasy football, just so that you're up to date. But also, it's a way for me to deliver some value right off the hop. And then I answer my 5 favorite YouTube comments from yesterday's video. So that basically just gives me an opportunity to reward the people that are giving positivity and also asking smart questions in every video. It's also a little bit of an engagement hack because the more comments I get, the more YouTube's going to boost this video overall. And then I'm going to jump into today's one key topic, aka the reason that you clicked. I always want to kind of deliver on every single click. So later in this video, I am going to prove to you that you drafted the wrong running backs. And I'm going to tell you the 5 that I bet everything on this year. And if you don't have them, why I'd recommend trading for them before week 1. Sound good? Great. Let's jump right into the biggest news story on the planet. Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift are engaged. Just kidding. Let's move to some actual news here that you guys have to work through from a fantasy football perspective. The first thing that really stood out to me today was that Amari Cooper signed with the Raiders. So lots of fantasy relevant news to get into. This one felt like one of the most important. Heading back to Vegas on a 1-year deal. 31-year-old, originally drafted by the Raiders, which some of you guys will remember. He's been kind of bouncing a lot around the league a little bit. Dallas, Cleveland, Buffalo, posted just 547 yards and 4 scores last year. So definitely not vintage Coop, but there's barely any target competition in Vegas right now, aside from Jacoby Myers. And there are some separate reports coming out claiming that Myers wants a trade. So depending on how this shakes out, Geno Smith could actually end up locking in on Cooper. But they threw a little bit of cold water on this today. Right before I was going to record this video, Adam Schefter is reporting that the Raiders are not looking to trade Jacoby Myers. So definitely some stuff to keep an eye on. There's a lot of implications here. Brock Bowers, there's a lot of implications here at running back, obviously Genty, but Jacoby Myers was one of my favorite kind of late round wide receiver targets. So I'm keeping a pretty close eye on this. The next one we have to talk about is Tajay Spears headed to the IR. This is a pretty big setback, obviously, for the Tennessee backfield, headed to injured reserve with an ankle sprain. It's a guarantee that he's going to miss at least 4 games while he rehabs from a high ankle injury. In the meantime, Tony Pollard should see a lot more touches, and Julius Chestnut slides in as the backup. This means that Pollard is going to get even more volume to start the year. He was already a guy that was a little bit higher on my board than others, but if you did stash Spears late, you're going to need to find some other depth until at least October. Another injury that really stood out to me that I've been monitoring very closely is Josh Downs. So I guess small update here, but Colts coach is optimistic that Josh Downs will return to practice next week. He's been sidelined I should say, since mid-August with that hamstring injury. But the good news is that there is some progress here, and his week 1 status still questionable, but it does seem to be sounding a little bit better. So if you're drafting late, Downs is more of like a stash than a start right now for sure. But the upside is still there, especially since Danny Dimes is now going to be the QB. Richardson would have been the main concern there when it came to Downs and his value in fantasy for me. Another fun story that doesn't seem to want to go away is that the Vikings and Panthers are still talking an Adam Thielen trade. So I guess, yeah, those reunion rumors are heating up a little bit. Thielen definitely wants to return to Minnesota. That seems pretty clear at this point. The Vikings could definitely use some help at wide receiver, but the compensation seems to be the sticking point here. Both sides seem pretty motivated to get something done before week 1, but unless Carolina is going to still hold on to a decent amount of that salary, I'm not sure how realistic it is, but we'll see. Interesting depth piece if he is traded. If not, I think the wide receiver 3 roughly in Carolina is a lot less exciting. Maybe not super exciting for fantasy, but from an NFL perspective, this was one of the biggest deals we've seen all year. So Trey Hendrickson does get paid in Cincy, one of the biggest contract conflicts, I guess, in the league that still needed to get resolved. But he did end his holdout, signed a $30 million deal with the Bengals. This is a 1-year raise, not extension, but keeps him in uniform for now, 17 and a half sacks and back-to-back seasons. Again, not a big fantasy move directly, but definitely is going to cause a little bit of a ripple effect with future pass rushers like Micah Parsons, that sort of thing. Next one we got here is Ty Chandler. So he might actually be cut, which is a little bit of a surprise for him not to make that final roster. Coaches are still worried about his pass protection despite his explosiveness. The belief is that they're going to go with Xavier Scott behind Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason instead. So if you were stashing Chandler as like a really deep sleeper, that's a red flag. Honestly, this is just another feather in the cap for one of my boys, Jordan Mason. One of the boys in the fantasy community has been Deontay Johnson. It does look like he has been released by the Browns. So, obviously, really strong start to his career in Pittsburgh, but things kind of unraveled quickly for him, bouncing between the Panthers, Ravens, Texans, and now Cleveland's move on from him after signing him to a short term deal. For fantasy, Johnson probably won't matter much unless he lands in the perfect spot. Was always kind of one of those guys that the fantasy community loved more than the NFL community. Joe Mixon. Where was this one that I was looking for? Oh yeah, this is the Shefty bomb. This is the one I was looking for. Unless he deleted it. But anyways, the tweet that I was looking at essentially was talking about what we've been talking about, what we've been fearing with Joe Mixon is that he was indeed placed on the reserve non-football injury list with that ankle issue. So now he's locked out for at least the first 4 games of the season. Hasn't practiced yet. Nick Chubb is expected to be the lead back for the Texans, at least the run game to start the season. Dameon Pierce probably going to factor in a little bit too. For fantasy, this kind of crushes Mixon's early season value, obviously. Chubb becomes kind of a early down play. Pierce is probably going to be like more of like a flex. I'm probably steering clear from this backfield altogether. One of the worst offensive lines in the league, and this Mixon stuff really puts a feather in that cap as well. Najee Harris is another one, another story that just seems to be having updates every single day. Najee Harris is expected to start the year on the non-football injury list with that eye issue. Team officials sound optimistic, but beat writers aren't buying it so far. So major shakeup. Harris was drafted as like that steady volume back, but now Hampton might be the one that you need to circle in drafts. We'll get to that here shortly. Last story we have today. Broncos have waived running back Audric Estime, so not a huge surprise here, but the Broncos did end up cutting him. He was a 5th-round pick just a year ago, but got squeezed out after Denver brought in RJ Harvey and J.K. Dobbins. This clears the way for Harvey to get a real shot early is my big takeaway here. And Estime might pop up on another roster. We'll see. Someone that needs like a downhill grinder, that sort of thing. But for now, he's off the radar for fantasy purposes. So let's get into some Q&A. I think a better way to do this, I was basically throwing screenshots on the whiteboard. I'm going to go through and just heart the questions that I thought were the best questions overall, and we'll kind of go from there. So the first question that I thought was at least right in the range of where I had to go at least check my rankings. Currently have Ricky Pearsall. Should I trade for George Pickens? I pretty strongly prefer Pickens in this range. So I have Pickens well ahead of him, probably about 10 to 15 picks ahead of Ricky Pearsall. We'll see what happens with the wide receiver injuries in San Francisco. But Pickens is a guy that I honestly, obviously, you guys saw in the video yesterday. Pickens is a guy that I'm going to try and get as many shares as possible of because it's just an absolutely perfect fit in Dallas. We don't need to go into that again. But the answer is if you can get George Pickens for Ricky Pearsall, that's a trade that I would absolutely make. Someone just dropped Ridley in my league. Tempted to pick him up, but don't know who to drop. I have Zach Ertz, J.K. Dobbins, Jordan Mason, DK Metcalf, Matthew Golden on my bench. My starting tight end is Tucker Kraft. Should I just let go of a tight end? Yeah, this was like one of those ones I thought I could answer quickly for you guys. I'd be dropping Zach Ertz 100 out of 100 times for Calvin Ridley. But the point I wanted to highlight here, Tucker Kraft is in a really good spot to have a breakout season as well. I don't know what I just clicked, but I got to go all the way to the top. Love Tucker Kraft. So if you have both of them, I'd be fine rolling with him. All right, let's keep this going. I full freighted Travion after the hype train. Same with Bill Koski. Ramondre and Rodriguez both get goal line work and going way later. Mistake or sound thinking? I am a big Travion fan this year. I think it's one of those things where some of these offenses that just need a jump start, they need someone that can come in and break big plays wide open, is someone that even, I think the last news story we saw about him was that he was going to be getting about half of the work, half the touches. I still think that even if we end up seeing some Ramondre and Rodriguez in close goal line stuff, it kind of feels a little bit like the Gibbs stuff, where if he can break some big plays, he might be scoring some bigger touchdowns as well, longer touchdowns to where this isn't even as relevant. Travion's still a guy, especially where he's being drafted, that I want to have on teams. Oh, this wasn't a question. Just wanted to quickly flag this and say thank you. Really like the whiteboard. So tired of flashy graphics by jerks who don't even edit their own stuff. Your pencil ship is a lot like mine, or your penmanship is a lot like mine too. Yeah, sorry for the bad handwriting. I am going to work on that. But I thought it'd be kind of a cool format to do this stuff. I've updated a little bit too, how this is going to look, just to give you guys an idea. So for a video like this was yesterday's video where we talked through the same version of this video, but the wide receiver things. You can kind of see that at least for each player, I want to have a few, probably 4 really solid things to talk through if it's a guy that I'm going to be trying to attack. So this is kind of yesterday's video. And then today, we'll get into in a second, we're going to have 5 more players that we're going to talk through, but on the running back sort of thing. So appreciate the feedback. I think the whiteboard stuff's kind of fun. I'm a whiteboard guy, so hopefully we'll be able to keep doing these videos a little bit more quickly for you guys with less editing, that sort of thing, and hopefully provide just a lot more value for subscribers. All right, let's see what other questions we had. Thank you guys for all the questions. It actually was pretty tough to pick some of these, so hopefully today's questions will be just as good for tomorrow's. What are your favorite stacks to target this season? Yeah, when I'm looking at stacks in general, one of the things that I really want to focus on is trying to find a quarterback that is a pocket passer, but also a late quarterback in general, so that I can typically just grab if I end up having someone that I want to build around. So the Dallas Cowboys are an easy example of this. So if you end up getting CD in the first round, if you end up getting Pickens later on, easy to just grab Dak late. I am a big fan of stacking in best ball, but then obviously in season long as well. Some people don't like to do that, kind of put their eggs in that one basket. I'm a fan of correlation in general. So some of my favorite stacks that I'm looking for this year, I love the Dallas stack. You can grab line stacks pretty easily as well if you do end up with Amon-Ra, but there's a ton of other options to stack Goff with. You can get Goff late around that Dak range. Love the Vikings. McCarthy is a quarterback that you can get very late. And then if you're going to mix in, obviously it works perfectly if you have Jefferson. But then getting Addison, I don't mind reaching for Addison on teams that have Justin Jefferson, reaching on him even like a full round, because after he comes back from that suspension, I think people don't realize how good Addison has been to start his career. So really like Dallas, really like Detroit, really like Minnesota. And then another comment that I saw here, I don't know if I highlighted it or not. You guys don't like the way I say Jaguars? Jaguars? The Jaguars are the team that I really like outside of those top 3 as a stack candidate. That's a comment that I see everywhere. Do I just say that really weird? I honestly had no idea. I wish I could find it. I thought I hearted it. Maybe I didn't. Anyways, the Jaguars are a team that I really like to stack. Cool. Do you think taking Josh Allen with the 2-3 turn is good? I have the 101 and plan to take Chase at 1 and a running back and Allen at the turn. PPR league, 2 wide receiver, 2 running back, 1 flex. This is an interesting, oh, you guys can't see what I'm talking about. There's the question. So this is an interesting conversation this year because it does seem to be that most of the guys in the 3rd round aren't that appealing. I can't remember a 3rd round where we've had a lot of these guys where every single player you can poke holes into, and big holes, right? We got like Garrett Wilson holes. We got Kyron Williams holes. We got James Cook holes. We got Devontae Adams holes. Like there's everyone really in that 3rd round. It doesn't make you feel as comfortable as it should. Sure. Could they hit value? Yeah. Will they exceed that value? I feel like it's one of those like really high floor, really low ceiling situations in the 3rd. So a lot of people have been talking about grabbing an elite quarterback this year early. So Josh Allen, Lamar, Hurts, Jaden Daniels. I actually am not super in favor of this overall because I think we force this a little bit too much in fantasy, even though those guys feel much safer. In this situation where you have the 101, so you're going to have Chase, you're going to get a running back, and then you're going to get your quarterback set up. I actually don't think that getting the quarterback set is much different than just going premium tight end early. So I actually don't mind this at the 101. I messed around with a couple mocks before this to see what the team would end up with. You're still going to feel a little bit light probably at wide receiver. and at running back, but you can fill some of those holes in the fifth, sixth, seventh round. Um, so I actually don't hate it. Um, I haven't done a ton of those, transparently, but the 101 does seem like a decent plan if you do want to approach grabbing a better quarterback in round three. Um, the mocks actually look pretty decent, so I'm okay with that. All right, guys. So now we should get into the more fun part of the day. But before we get into that, I always want to kind of remind you guys too that if you like the vibe here, if you guys want to get some more help with your draft, all that good stuff, you can go to fantasyaccelerator.com or the first link in the description. That'll give you everything you need for your draft. But if you're not ready for the full draft kit yet, there is a link in the description as well. If you just want my top 150 rankings, totally free, top150free.com. It's the exact list that I'm using in every single draft. So make sure you guys check that out. If I didn't get to your question, now's a good time to kind of remind you guys that of that membership community, because everyone's questions get answered in there. Cool. All right. So I'm here to tell you guys that you have drafted the wrong running backs, the absolute wrong running backs. So number one on this list, our boy Chase Brown. Let's zoom in here. Chase Brown. So to me, we got to start Chase Brown, obviously, in PPR leagues. He's the guy that we've been targeting a ton. I've gotten a ton of shares of him in the third round. I recognize now that there are some leagues, a lot of sharper leagues, where he's falling into the back half of the second, which I'm still totally okay with. The first thing that I want to talk about, though, is that he's basically the clear focal point running back before everyone freaks out in a pass first offense. So I think the hook for one of my videos this year was it felt like at times that I was watching Christian McCaffrey just because of how involved he was in the passing game last year. So wide receiver level usage. That's something we have to talk about. 93 targets, 80 receptions last year with multiple double-digit target games is basically just a PPR cheat code, at least from a profile perspective for a running back. The final 8 weeks, running back 5 per game with at least 3 receptions, and every week he's going to give you ceiling, he's going to give you stability. It's just a really nice combination there. 11.2% target share, not just checkdowns. He was a real part of the route tree, which was great. The offensive coordinator, to this point, as him being the focal point, has already called him the focal point this year. So really like this situation. Bengals ranked top 2 in situation neutral pace over the last 2 years, and their games led the NFL in total points, which is not going to happen. It's not going to slow down at any moment here, I don't think, just because the Cincy defense is hashtag bad. All right. So for me, the third thing that we have to talk about is just that we already have proof, right? We have proof of him being a bell cow last year. After Moss's injury, 189 of 198 backfield touches. That's 95.5% of the backfield touches. Completely insane, right? The Bengals only added a 6th-round rookie, Taj Brooks, and kind of a role-specific player in Samaje Perine. Moss was released, so there's really no competition here. So this is going to continue, and I would argue that this is going to continue, or at least still a highly above average touch share in an offense that we really want to see a lot of. The fourth thing that I want to talk about, though, the rushing schedule is very tough. It's like a bottom 5 rushing schedule. So shaky offensive line at best, but what we're deciding here is, can he still be a round 2 smash for your fantasy team? And I think yes, because even if it ends up being a worse situation on the ground, the volume that he's going to see through the air, those high equity touches, those high leverage touches, just racking things up in PPR leagues, I think the floor is very safe, and there's still weak winning upside there with how many touchdowns he's going to score through the air. So, Chase Brown, one of the first guys that I'm trying to get as many shares of as possible at running back. And that's kind of one of the biggest guys that I'm placing my bets on this year. Should we move on to number 2? Look how nice this looks with all these put together. This is cool. I like the whiteboarding stuff. Number 2, another guy that we've spent some time on this year, but I want to hammer home that if you don't have this guy, you drafted the wrong running backs, friends. I almost moved both these at the same time. I almost had a preemptive reveal there. Let's talk about Alvin Kamara, friends. Let's talk about our boy, Alvin Kamara. So, again, I think we have 4 main things to talk about here. The first one is going to be the PPR volume. And the fact that it's extremely safe. And at this point in your draft, we were just kind of talking about the back end of the third. You kind of need some safety here. So if you aren't going to go the quarterback route that we talked about, trying to grab one of these elite quarterbacks, I think that Alvin Kamara, even as like a slight reach, the end of the third, beginning of your fourth, he's still going to provide you with an elite floor. Led all running backs in expected fantasy points per game last year. Scored 19 per game last year. The gap screams to kind of normalize a little bit, but that 21.5% target share was number 1 at the position, 4.9 catches, and 38.8 receiving yards per game. That was number 2. So you're going to get that bankable weekly floor, that security that we really want to see from a guy that we're going to pick in the top 3-4 rounds. And then Kellen Moore, this is the other part of this. The reason he's safe, Kellen Moore with a C, no, with a K. Learn something new every year, every day. Kellen Moore, OC. So Kellen Moore has already said that Kamara is going to be a big part of the offense and that he's going to continue to be a premier player in this league and definitely in this offense. So he's like the one player to me that doesn't break even if this offense isn't super productive. The role is going to be there. The part that I do like about this schedule. We just talked about this with Chase Brown, but the schedule for the Saints is actually the second easiest. I don't know why that's disappearing. Second easiest schedule for running backs. The offensive line is not great in pass blocking, but it is a little bit better in run blocking. So to me, that's actually both of those things are good for Kamara. If they can't pass block, more dump offs to Kamara because there's going to be pressure on the quarterback. If they can block, and like I said, they're better at run blocking, we might get some more of those chunk yardage that we're used to seeing from him in the run game. So more scheme is expected to lean a little bit more run heavy anyway to kind of fit this personnel. But I don't think that takes away much from Kamara. Moore's offenses live in the top 8 in pace historically. So there's just more total plays to feed touches. So let's say pace here too. So I think the perception flip that we need here, or that we need to talk about, is that he's an aging back who mostly is getting there on usage alone. Some of that is true. He's for sure aging. He's not the Alvin Kamara that he used to be. He's coming off a career high in touches at 296 touches, but he still had almost 1,500 total yards, guys. He was the RB5 in points per game in PPR, despite missing 3 games. He led all running backs in receptions per game, like we talked about, receiving yards per game, 38.8 receiving yards per game. So he's usable even when this offense kind of sputters out, like I was saying. But the team committed to him. 2-year deal, $24.5 million extension last October. And the coaches have already said that he's going to get feature usage. So to me, the question that we have to answer here is, what if we can get a guy in round 4 in a lot of leagues that buys us an RB1 floor? That's essentially what it is. He's a late 3rd, early 4th, running back 1 floor. That's what you have to pay for there. And in an area of your draft where it's not that easy, here, zoom out since my face is in the way a little bit of some of these numbers. Um, those kind of players don't just grow on trees. So I'm targeting Kamara at cost as like a weekly RB2 for my teams with a safe RB1 floor and full PPR. And then you're buying those catches, you're buying that volume. You're not necessarily buying a ton of touchdowns because of this offense, but it's a situation where if you're trying to grab some safety in round 4, which I think is a pretty good round to do that, we just talked about why the quarterbacks are popular this year in round 3, round 4. I think Kamara is a great way to do that at running back. So if you don't have Chase Brown, you don't have Alvin Kamara, you drafted the wrong running backs. There's still time to trade for these guys before week 1, though. You guys want to see number 3? RJ Harvey. My boy, RJ Harvey. I feel like we've been talking about him a lot this offseason as well, and the news keeps getting better for Harvey. Keeps getting better. Let's stick to our normal format here of trying to get 4 solid reasons why. The first thing for RJ Harvey is the draft capital, which to me equals intent. So there's a lot of intent here for Denver. They spent a 2nd-round pick on Harvey, making him the RB5 in the class, clear signal that Peyton wants to use him, right? And why that matters, that 2nd-round investment, the camp reports of Harvey running with the first team, proves that this isn't just a stash and it's not just a player that they're going to bring along slowly. I think he steps right in to significant touches week 1. And the second part of this that I think makes this the most appealing to me is that he's built for Peyton's system. He's built for this system. The Broncos ranked 1st and 5th in running back target share during Peyton's first 2 years in Denver. The Saints team so that he had top 5 in running back targets every season from 2014 to 2021. So he does the same thing with his running backs. He just didn't have the archetype that he needed until now. So Harvey's receiving chops fit perfectly in this scheme. He profiles to get those kind of swing passes, the scheme catches, while Dobbins is going to handle some more of the pass protection situations. But why it matters is that Denver is one of the most running back friendly systems in football. Sorry for my handwriting. You guys get the idea. Running back friendly system. So let's talk about this. His camp. All reports have been saying that he has looked exceptional in camp. Peyton said that Harvey has had runs that made coaches turn around and look at each other. Those are the type of things that you want to see, right? They even called him exceptional. So we know that he's got the speed. The speed score stuff is definitely one of the most explosive backs in the room at this time. So we get explosiveness. We get some buy-in from the coaches. And then Harvey isn't just kind of holding that role. He has real league-winning juice if Denver decides to lean on him, which I think they will. So to me, the question that we have to ask ourselves is this a floor play or ceiling play? What we didn't even mention here, part of the reason this is one of the most running back friendly is the O-line. One of the best offensive lines in football, top 5 for sure. The Broncos project to have more red zone rushing usage in 2025, and Bo Nix has already been targeting running backs at one of the highest rates in the NFL. 6th most in the NFL. 21.2% of his targets did go to running backs last year. So to me, if you can get a guy, current ADP, 62nd overall, so you're going to have to spend a 6th-round pick on him, ideally, reaching on him in the 5th every now and then. But if he falls into like the mid-6th, I think he's a slam dunk. So my vote is ceiling from RJ Harvey. And he's one of those guys, too, that I want to try and leave almost every draft with some exposure there. So if you don't have Harvey, Kamara, or Chase Brown, you drafted the wrong receivers, there's time to trade for them. Let's talk about 2 more guys here. Number 4, Omarion Hampton. We talked about the new stuff. I feel like we've been talking about Najee ad nauseum for weeks now. But let's walk through Omarion Hampton. All right. 4 reasons why he should be one of your main targets this year. Similar to what we just talked about, the first is going to be draft capital, but this one is first round draft capital. This stuff matters, guys. Drafted 22nd overall, already signed a 4-year, $17.7 million deal. Clear investment from the franchise. Greg Roman's offense has never finished lower than 11th in rushing attempts in the 11 years that he's been running plays. Chargers added Hampton despite already paying Najee $5 million. Signals a lot of intent again. This is before Najee had that fireworks incident, right? So he's their long-term future role. Talent profile that can't be ignored. So let's talk about the talent. 3 stars for him. At UNC, 3,100 rushing yards, 30 TDs, 67 catches over the last 2 seasons. He's over 220 pounds. He still runs a 4.46 40, 96 percentile explosion score at the combine. So this guy's got all the measurables, the entire profile that you would want to see for a guy that's hopefully going to be one of the centerpieces of this offense. But yeah, opportunity is king, right? So this Najee stuff absolutely matters because of a hidden early runway. So one of the things that sometimes is unfortunate about these rookie running backs is they take a little bit to actually come along, right? To actually be super useful for us in fantasy. With this eye injury for Najee, we might get Hampton to see like the bulk of the first team reps for the majority of the beginning of the season, right? We'll see. Um, they're going to see what they have in this guy. No real timetable for Najee's return at this point. It seems like they keep pushing it back. So to me, what this tells me, what if the rookie is already the RB1 or already an RB1 in general? Just what if, right? These are the ambiguous backfields where we have young talent coming in that we really want to target when we're trying to find breakout players. So the Chargers do face the 4th toughest rushing schedule, but Hampton still projects for a ton of volume, and volume is king at running back. So the system kind of is going to cap his receiving upside ultimately, but I think early volume, touchdown upside, even if it's a slow run heavy offense, this is a situation that he could explode into this RB1 territory and stay there if we don't get Najee Harris back for an extended period of time, or even if he just plays so well that their plans change, right? So I think even if we get the split in favor of Hampton, even after this injury, after Najee comes back, I think it's going to become pretty clear pretty early that the rookie that you'll kind of regret passing on from like a league winning upside perspective at running back, you can get him in the 4th round, and his name's Omarion Hampton. I like him a lot. He's one of these 4 guys that if you don't have him, you drafted the wrong wide receivers. You drafted the wrong running backs. Still time to trade for him. We got one more to talk about. If you've been watching my content all off season, the shorts, the longs, the walk and talks, the different formats, who do you guys think that we're going to talk about here? Late round running back. A guy that they've already come out and said is the 1A, 1B situation. He was traded to this team. It's an offense that we really like for points. It has a new quarterback this year. Let me know in the comments if you guys guessed it right away. Jordan Mason. 100 overall in terms of his ADP. You can get him in the ninth round. I remember when you could get him in the 11th round. Those days have come and gone, but still really love the idea of getting a ton of shares of him in fantasy. So let's talk about him. Jordan Mason. The first thing is that the Vikings fixed the trenches. It wasn't long ago that the offensive line was a big problem here. But the interior of the offensive line, they really rebuilt it with a first round pick in Ryan Kelly. They paired him with one of the best tackle duos in all of football. So Mason's really coming at the perfect time for what he does best. Um, and I think one of the best offensive lines in football, especially on the interior. So Mason was called a perfect fit from KOC. And I think for this scheme, like the short yardage role that he's going to have, he is perfect. So they went out and got him. I loved when I saw this because he's kind of everything that they didn't get from Aaron Jones last year. You guys remember those fumbles by the goal line? Not that Aaron Jones has been a big fumbler in his career, but it just gives you another look. So the second thing I want to talk about that I don't think many people have is the efficiency. A plus. A plus efficiency. Mason averaged 5.2 yards per carry, 46 running backs with 100 plus carries while facing stacked boxes on 51% of his runs. So the second highest in the league. So they knew it was coming. When he came into the game, they were going to run the ball between the tackles, and he still had a 5.2 yards per carry. Ranked top 10 in both broken tackle rate and yards after contact per attempt last season. In 6 starts for the 49ers, he averaged 21.3 touches, 111 yards, and finished as a top 24 running back in 4 of 6 games. So this guy was winning people weeks. So he's being drafted as just like some handcuff that hasn't showed us upside before. Not only is he going to score touchdowns in this offense, um, he's going to break big plays, and it's going to come after contact. But the thing that everyone wants to talk about is the red zone role. So that's going to flip in his favor. So Aaron Jones, 13 carries inside the 5 last year for -2 yards and a fumble. Minnesota traded a 5th round pick to replace that weakness with Mason. So they traded for Mason. They didn't just pick him up. KOC confirmed that Mason's going to be the 1B, the primary short yardage goal line option. The Vikings scored 9 rushing TDs last season. That was bottom 4 in the NFL. Plenty of room here for upside and for Mason to kind of swing some weekly matchups just with touchdowns alone. So I think that we should end this video on this. What if Aaron Jones gets hurt? I think this one's pretty obvious, but you're going to get an instant RB1. An instant RB1. Mason's projected for 141 to like 150 carries, roughly. But if Jones misses time, he's the guy that can be a workhorse behind a really good offensive line. He already showed it in that small sample with the 49ers that he can be that guy. And that the Vikings weren't scoring touchdowns last year in the running game, that's going to regress positively in their favor. So if Jones goes down, Mason doesn't just become playable. He's an instant RB1 that could swing your entire season. So these are the guys that you want to make sure that you have as many shares of as possible in fantasy this year at the running back position, but there's still time to trade for them. If you haven't checked out the last video where we talked through the wide receivers in this range, go check that out next. If you like these whiteboard style videos and you want me to continue doing these, drop some comments. I'll be reading them next, I guess tomorrow when we do the next video. But I appreciate you guys being with us.